For centuries, farmers, builders and explorers whispered about individuals who could find water where no one else could. They called them water witches, dowsers or diviners, and their methods were often dismissed as superstition. Yet across history and continents, their success rates were remarkable, sometimes exceeding modern techniques in locating hidden water. This wasn't magic. It was observation, intuition, and an intimate understanding of the land. By studying how water moves beneath the surface, water witches tapped into patterns that anyone can learn to read with practice and attention. Water witches relied on subtle signs rather than guessing. Contrary to popular belief, water witches did not swing rods blindly. They observed soil, vegetation and terrain. Soil that is darker, softer or more lush than surrounding areas often signals moisture. Plants with deep roots or a preference for wet conditions cluster over underground streams. Slight depressions, ancient riverbeds or even the alignment of trees and moss can indicate water channels. Water witches trained themselves to notice these indicators long before metal detectors or geological surveys existed. The rod and forked stick amplified natural cues. The classic dowsing rod, whether L-shaped or forked, is a tool for amplifying subtle human responses to environmental cues. When a dowser walks over water-rich areas, micro-variations in gravity, moisture, or electromagnetic fields may trigger involuntary hand movements. These movements guide the rod. Historical accounts from Europe, China, and the Americas consistently describe rods dipping or twisting over underground streams. Modern research suggests that muscle memory and sensitivity to subtle cues rather than supernatural forces explain much of this effect. Observation of local ecology was key to accuracy. Water witches didn't work in isolation. They studied how the local environment behaved. Certain grasses, sedges and trees thrive over shallow aquifers. In arid regions, depressions where water accumulates after rain can mark underground flow paths. Even insects and animals provide clues. By combining visual, tactile and auditory information, dowsers could narrow down potential sources of water before testing with rods. Ancient communities, really did rely on water witches for survival. In times and places without wells or pumps, locating water could honestly mean life or death. European villages, Bedouin tribes, and Native American communities all called upon water witches to guide well placement. Historical records from the 16th century in Germany note that dowsers successfully found water in 80 to 90% of wells drilled, which is a rather remarkable success rate, especially given the absence of modern hydrogeology. Water witches were essential not because of mysticism, but because they, integrated environmental knowledge into a systematic method. Let's talk a bit about how water movement beneath the surface influenced results. Water witches intuitively understood that underground water rarely sits still. It follows gravity, permeable rock and soil layers, you see. Hard layers above soft saturated layers can create these hidden channels. Moisture rises along cracks and fissures, subtly affecting surface soil and vegetation. Recognizing these patterns allowed dowsers to predict not only the presence of water, but its approximate depth. And that, really, is why rods respond in consistent locations across similar terrains. Now, how can we apply water witching principles today? Well, you don't need a forked stick to put these principles to work. Start by observing your landscape carefully. Note vegetation patterns, soil moisture, depressions, and natural runoff channels. Use shallow probing or soil moisture sensors to validate your observations. If you want to experiment with traditional methods, select a forked stick or L-shaped metal rods, relax your body, and walk slowly over suspected water paths. The goal here is to train attention, not rely on the rod alone. Over time, your observations will become your most reliable guide. So let's talk about some practical examples for, modern farmers and survivalists. Farmers, for instance, can actually use water witching principles to choose well locations or even to optimize their irrigation systems. And for survivalists, those very same techniques can help you locate water in remote areas, especially when you don't have any drilling equipment on hand. Even gardeners stand to benefit. Understanding how soil moisture is distributed can really help reduce overwatering and ensure you're targeting irrigation exactly where it's most needed. When you combine traditional observation with modern measurement tools, well, you're really multiplying your effectiveness. Why is this method still relevant in the modern world, you might wonder? Well, despite all the advances in hydrology, water remains a scarce and honestly a rather hidden resource in many regions. GPS and geophysical surveys, while impressive, are expensive and often out of reach for small-scale farmers or remote communities. The ancient approach, based on careful observation and, intuitive amplification with rods, remains cost-effective, reliable, and remarkably sustainable. It reminds us that empirical knowledge accumulated over centuries often surpasses purely technological solutions when it's interpreted correctly. What did those ancient water witches understand that we often overlook today? They saw the landscape as a truly interconnected system. Water isn't isolated, it flows, pools, and interacts with the soil, with plants, and with the very shape of the land. Success, in their eyes, didn't come from luck, but from patience, observation, and recognizing patterns. The rod was just a tool. The real instrument was the mind, and the land itself always provided the answer. If this kind of practical, historically grounded knowledge matters to you, well, do consider subscribing to FarmLab, and perhaps share this with fellow history enthusiasts, farmers and survivalists who want to read the land the way our ancestors did. Water witching isn't just a myth. It's a skill that helped communities thrive. And honestly, it still works today.